So hi everyone, myself Arun and I am an Mbbs student studying at Government Changalpet Medical College. So today I'll be talking about the radial nerve. So there are basically three important nerves in our human anatomy. So if you talk about upper limb, there are mostly these three important nerves are there. So these are the radial nerve, median nerve and the ulnar nerve. So today I'll be talking about radial nerve. So these are the notes which I have created on my own. So let us see them one by one. So first we're talking about the radial nerve. So we'll talk about the course first. So it originates from the posterior cord of the brachial plexus. So and its root values include the C5, C6, C7, C8 and the T1, which basically involves all the root values of the brachial plexus, which I hope you would have already learned in brachial plexus chapter. So now talking about the course, it starts from the posterior cord of the brachial plexus and leaves the axilla through the lower triangular space. So let me put it very clearly. So first we'll talk about the course of the radial. So yeah, you see the flow chart over the right side of the page. So let us first clearly talk about the course and then we'll go into the details of the radial. So first talking about the course starts from the posterior cord of the brachial plexus and then leaves the axilla through the lower triangular space. So I hope you know about the three triangular spaces, right? The quadrangular space, the lower triangle and the upper triangular space and their contents. So basically this particular radial nerve, it leaves from the lower triangular space along with the profunda brachii artery, right? So now then it passes through the spiral or the radial groove that is present in the humerus and then pierces the lateral intermuscular septum. So this LIMS means lateral intermuscular septum, and then it descends in front of the lateral epicondyle, and then it splits into two branches. One is the superficial branch and other is the posterior interosseous nerve. So this superficial branch basically leaves the cubital fossa by passing deep to the brachioradialis. So I hope you already know about the cubital fossa. So this brachioradialis is one of the boundary of the cubital fossa. So it basically passes deep to the brachioradialis and leaves the cubital fossa, and then it goes over the anatomical snuff box, like it forms the roof of the anatomical snuff box. And again, if you talk about anatomical snuff box, one of the contents in the roof was our radial nerve, and then it supplies the dorsum of the hand, that is the lateral 3.5 except the nail buds, and these nail buds are going to be supplied by our median nerve, right? So now talking about the posterior interosseous nerve, and this posterior interosseous nerve actually supplies most of the muscles in the posterior compartment. So it actually runs between the lamina of the supinator and runs behind the interosseous membrane. So you know about the interosseous membrane, right? So the anterior and the posterior interosseous membrane. So it basically runs behind the interosseous membrane and then supplies the extensor compartment, like supplies the muscles in the extensor compartment. Now let us talk in like this is the overview of the radial. Okay, now let us talk in detail about radial. So starting from the course, so basically starts from the brachial plexus, that is the posterior cord, and then it supplies a muscle called triceps. So actually triceps has three heads, right? So the long head, medial head, the lateral head. So it basically supplies the long head and the medial head. Okay, so first it supplies the long head and the medial head. Now don't get confused about the alphabets I have used here, that is A, B, C and D. You will get to know about them later in the later course of the video. So first it supplies the triceps, that is the long head and the medial head of the triceps. Then it runs along the radial groove. The radial groove is also called the spiral groove. So then runs along the radial groove and then pierces the lateral intermuscular septum and then runs in front of the lateral epicondyle and splits into two branches, the superficial branch and the posterior interosseous nerve. So this superficial branch goes later on to supply the dorsum of the hand, that the lateral 3.5 of the dorsum of the hand except the nail beds. And this posterior interosseous nerve supplies the extensor group of muscles. Okay, the posterior the muscles in the posterior compartment of our forearm, right? So now let us talk about the muscle supplying. So first basically it supplies the triceps, that is the long head and the medial head, and then once it enters the spiral groove, basically it supplies the triceps. Again it supplies the triceps, but now it supplies the medial and the lateral head of the triceps. Along with that, it also supplies the anconeus. So I hope you already know about the muscles that are present in the extensor compartment of our arm. So I'll be discussing about them in the later course of the video. So now for now you just remember that it supplies the medial and the lateral head of the triceps along with the anconeus in the spiral groove. Now as it pierces the lateral intermuscular septum, it supplies two muscles. One is the brachioradialis and the other is the extensor carpi radialis longus, right? Now this extensor carpi radialis longus is also known as our wrist extensors. The reason why I am telling this is the wrist extensor is because So it helps in extension of the wrist. For now, you just remember that. So because you know about their clinical anatomy when I talk about the injury to the radial nerve. So for now, just remember that it applies the extensor carpi radialis longus and the brachioradialis once it pierces the lateral intermuscular septum. Now it runs in front of the lateral epicondyle and then splits into two. That is the superficial branch and the posterior interosseous nerve. So once the posterior interosseous nerve comes, it runs in between the lamina of the supinator. So now when the supinator muscle, when there is a compression of the supinator muscle, these two lamina can be compressed, and again there can be damage to the radial nerve. So this is one of the possibility of damage that can be caused to the radial nerve, right? So once it enters the posterior interosseous nerve, so once it comes as the posterior interosseous nerve, it supplies the extensor group of muscles, which includes our extensor carpi radialis brevis, extensor indicis, extensor pollicis longus, extensor pollicis brevis, abductor pollicis longus, extensor digitorum, extensor digiti minimi, extensor carpi ulnaris. Right. So these are the muscles which I hope you already know. They come under the posterior compartment of the forearm. Now talking about the muscles present in the posterior compartment, so there are two groups of muscles, right? So if you talk about posterior compartment, there will be lateral and the posterior group of muscles. So the muscles coming under the lateral groups will include our brachioradialis, which already has come here, and secondly extensor carpi radialis longus, which is present in the which is supplied when it pierces the lateral intermuscular septum, and extensor carpi radialis brevis, right? So these three come under the lateral group. And when you talk about the posterior compartment proper, you have extensor digitorum, extensor digiti minimi, extensor carpi ulnaris, and anconius, right? So anconius is already supplied when it enters the spiral groove or the radial groove, right? So this is the course of the radial nerve. Now let us talk about the clinical anatomy, right? So whenever there is some damage that is caused to the radial nerve, so just keep in mind about the extensor carpi radialis longus. It is also known as our wrist extensor, right? So you'll know about them when I talk about the injury to the radial nerve. So now we have got our case A. So what happens in case A? Case A is also known as our crutch palsy. Why are we naming this as a crutch palsy? The reason is because people when they are prone to some certain fractures in the leg, or when they are not able to walk, they basically use crutches, right? So these crutches often apply some pressure in their arm, in their forearm, like the region between their axilla. So so because of which, what will happen is this particular region, you see here, I will mark it with some other color. Yeah, this particular region, right, of the axilla is getting damaged. So when that particular region is getting affected, so the radial nerve of that particular point is getting compressed. So the entire course of the entire muscles which is applying below that particular point will get affected. So when this particular part is affected, the entire course of the radial nerve below is going to get affected, right? So this part and this part, everything is going to be get affected. Let me clear it out. Yeah. So when this particular part is going to be affected, the entire course of the radial nerve or the entire muscles which the radial nerve supplies below that particular point will get affected. So now let us talk about the muscles which is going to be affected because of the paralysis at that particular point. So first is the triceps. See, you can see the triceps is getting damaged, right? So see, triceps is getting damaged. So obviously when triceps, what's the function of the triceps? Yeah, extension of the elbow. So when extension is not there, obviously the elbow will be flexed, right? So next, the extensor carpi radialis longus is getting affected. So I told you that extensor carpi radialis longus is a wrist extensor. So when that extensor is not there, there will be a drop in the wrist. So there will be a wrist drop, right? As simple as it is. And then again, now if you see these muscles, right, extensor digitorum, extensor digiti minimi, and these are nothing but our extensors of our fingers. So when these extensors are damaged, I told you that, see, obviously these will be damaged, right? So below the A point, if you see, the entire muscles, the course of the nerve is going to be damaged. So all the muscles below the A point is not going to be innervated by our radial nerve. So the entire muscles below the point of A will be affected. So obviously this extensor digitorum, digiti minimi will be affected. So extensor of fingers is not there. So when extensor of fingers is not there, there will be finger drop. And you already know that superficial branch of the radial nerve, that will also get affected. So obviously there will be sensory loss in the later 3.5 of the dorsum of the hand. I told the superficial branch of the radial nerve will supply the dorsum of the hand, like the later 3.5 except the nail beds, right? So when that is not when that is affected, there will be sensory loss. So that occurs in the case A. So you understood, right? Case A is also known as caused due to crutch palsy. See, crutch palsy is one of the reasons, right? So there could be many other reasons for due to which there can be damage in the radial nerve at the point A. So these are the conditions. So these are the clinical conditions you will see when there is a damage to the radial nerve at the point A. So triceps will be affected. So elbow is flexed. Wrist extensors are damaged, so wrist drop will be there. Extensors of the fingers are damaged, so the finger drop will be there. And sensory loss is there in the later 3.5 of the dorsum of the hand. So this is about case A. Now let us talk about case B. See, case B, again there can be many other reasons. So what one of the the common reasons people say is the Saturday night palsy. So the reason they say it is a Saturday night palsy is because you know about the people who often get drunk during the Saturday night, and you know about their positions, right? So they'll be sleeping like, so this is a vague representation of their position. Okay, so they'll be sleeping like this, like the hands on the chair. So this is the chair and this is the drunkard. Yeah, their hands will be placed over the chair and they'll be sleeping. So they mostly get drunk during the parties which occur late night in the Saturdays, right? So because of which what will happen is there is a compression the radial nerve at the point B. See, if you see the point B is present in the spiral groove or the radial groove. So the one of the most important point you should notice here is that the triceps, the long head and the medial head of the triceps is going to be get spared. So because of which, see, I already told that the triceps main function is going to be extension, right? So when some of the muscles of the triceps are going to be get spared. So if you see clearly, the long head and medial head is going to get spared. So because of which there will be weak elbow extension. If you see in the case A, the extension is completely lost and elbow will be flexed. But in case B, elbow extension is seen, but there will be weak extension. The reason is because the long head and medial head of the triceps is spared. Only the medial head and the lateral head is affected. So because of which weak extension in elbow will be there, first case. Secondly, then all the other remaining clinical cases will be the same as the case A. The reason is because the entire nerve, the course of the nerve below the below the point B is going to be damaged. So there will be a wrist drop, there will be a finger drop, and there will be sensory loss. So yeah, that's about case B. Now let us talk about case C. So in case C, if you see, the damage is at the lateral epicondyle. So the damage is present over the lateral epicondyle. So I told you it runs in front of lateral epicondyle, right? So when there is any damage, that could be because of many other reasons. So when there is damage at the lateral epicondyle, what will happen is the extensor carpi radialis is spared. So I told you extensor carpi radialis longus is our wrist extensor. So when that is spared, there won't be any wrist drop. Okay. And you can also see that finger drop is there. Why? Can you? I hope you now understood like why is there a finger drop? The reason is because our digitorum, digiti minimi, these are spared, right? So I told you know you can see like the post interruption nerve supplies the extensor digitorum, digiti minimi. So these are all going to get spared. So because of which there won't be any wrist drop. There won't be any finger drop, and obviously there will be sensory loss. So because this particular point is lost, right? So there will be sensory loss. So I hope you understood the case C. Case C occurs at this particular point. So when there's damage over here, sensory loss will be there, and along with that, the extensor digitorum, digiti minimi, they are also getting affected. So finger drop will be there. But if you see extensor carpi radialis longus is getting spared. So because of which, at least there is some muscle which is going to get extended, right? Which helps in extension of the fingers. So there won't be any wrist drop. So see, there will be wrist drop, but not as compared to the previous cases, right? So at least because you can see at least that one muscle that is intact. So extensor carpi radialis longus is intact, which helps in preventing the wrist drop. Now case D. So this is also called a radial tunnel syndrome, and so it basically occurs due to the fracture of the or because of the damage of the radial nerve at the head of the radius. So here if you see, the posterior interosseous nerve is damaged. So in this particular condition, our posterior interosseous nerve is getting damaged. So when posterior interosseous nerve is getting damaged, the entire group of muscles supplied by the posterior interosseous nerve below it is going to get affected. So I guess you can now guess the condition, like clinical condition of that particular patient. See what is getting spared. Just look at the things that are present above and below the point of damage. So you can see that posterior interosseous, below the posterior interosseous nerve, all the extensor